Good morning to everyone gathered here. Today, my presentation is on property rights and exploitation of environmental resources in India. So far, we have come across various reasons for the environmental degradation, that is, population growth, industrialization, migration, urbanization, and n number of factors that leads to environmental degradation. But my presentation is very particular about how property rights leads to environmental degradation. So with this, first we have to know how the property rights is defined. And according to comments in 1968, he examines that a property that ensures exclusivity, security, and transferability. If I am having a property and it should be well used by me, and I can have the right to exclude others, and at the same time I must feel that the property is secure. I must not feel that it is insecure. And when I feel that I want to transfer the rights to other, I must have the right to transfer the property. Though if all these dimensions are covered, then we can say it is a secure property rights. Otherwise, it is ill-defined or insecure property rights. And even if you come across the Ronald Coase theorem, he says that when we have secure property rights or well established property rights, then the right owner or the individual, if there is any problem, they can go for a negotiation, and which will involve zero transaction cost. And accordingly, when property rights are very secure, then there is no need for the government intervention to solve the issues. That is the major core idea of Ronald Coase. And if you take the aspect of Dempsey's, which he has published the article in 67, he says that these property rights will guide incentives to achieve a greater internalization of externalities. So, if you take the externalities, the private property does not have various externalities that is going to create. But if you take the public good, when people are misusing, then it creates externalities. And even if industry pollute, and it creates externalities. So, when we have a secure property rights, then we can internalize the externalities, and it will help us to manage the resources. And before that, we must understand what are the property that is available and what is its nature. And if you take the public property, all the people they have equal rights to use, and there is no need of rivalness, and there is no need of exclusivity. All can utilize. If you take the case of a national radio or a defense, all have equal parts to utilize the resources. That is a public property. When it comes to private property, they have the right to exclude others, and there will be a rivalness, but they can exclude others, because as it is my property, I have the right to exclude others. No, others will not be allowed to use the property. If you take the common property resources, the property will be owned by a particular community or a village. That particular community will be allowed to use the resources, and others will be excluded. Other villages cannot enter into a village or a community to utilize those resources. So this is what common property resources. But if you take the case of common pool resources, it is state owned or national government owned property, which is governed by the state government at a large extent. If you take the forest, it is managed by the state government, like that. So how this property and its rights affect the environmental conditions or natural resources. And when the properties are ill-defined, when the property rights is ill-defined, the people, the community, or the industries, they may misuse the resources. For example, if you take, if it is my property, I will be taking more care, and I will not allow others to misuse my resources. No one can dump waste in my property, as it is my private property. But if you take a common land, public land, then people, they dump the waste, and even industries, they dump the solid waste. And if it is a river, then they dump the liquid waste. And this property determines how it should be used. So this misuse of resources or overused resources is an outcome of tragedy of commons, which is said by the Gazette Hardin. who says people, when it is a common property or common pool resources, they misuse and they overuse, and it appears like tragedy of commons. And that too, we are using the resources beyond its renewable capacity, and we don't bother whether it is renewable resource or non-renewable resources, as we exploit the resources and we never worry about the renewable capacity. And that is what we are suffering a lot due to this environmental impact. And if you take the cost, who bears the social cost? And private cost, a industry is polluting, or an individual or a group of people dumping waste in a particular region, but it may create externalities, it may involve social cost, it may affect the health of the people, and they have to bear. And for example, if I am making a mistake, then I have to bear the cost. But in the case of environment, the industries or people, they dump the waste or pollute the environment, and people are get affected, and social cost incurs. As a result, if you take the environmental resources, almost land, water, forests, all these resources are affected due to ill-defined property rights. If the rights are clear, then if it is secure, then the care shown to the property will be too high. And even if you take the case, for example, if you take my residence where I have a compound or fencing, if I am having a tree, I take more care and I manage the tree. But if it is just near to my compound, which is a common tree, and if someone breaks the branches, no one comes and asks. The thing is, it is a common tree. But if you take a individual, he has certain interest to manage the natural resources when it is coming under his boundary or right. When it is a common property, no one is ready to take care of. That is the situation here. And as I said even in the introduction, we have come across various reasons of environmental degradation, but property rights appears to be a major reason which leads to environmental depletion. I have taken a few cases of these property rights and exploitation of resources. If you take the forest resources, the commons, they, as it is owned by the state government, people or commons or the smugglers, those who enter into the forest and they misuse, they cut down the trees, and which leads to various environmental issues. And having enough tree is a prime need to manage the environment, to overcome all the issues. Just it can absorb the pollution and it can give oxygen to us. But without knowing this, we are for various reasons, for expansion of industries and population growth, for everything we cut down the trees. And simultaneously, and because of this insecure rights, people enter and they cut down the trees, and irrespective of whether it is dry or green, nothing else is bothered, and they misuse the tree. And if it is in my boundary, if it is a private property, a private trees, and no one can be allowed to misuse. And that is what happening. And you can see the data. And for livelihood, around 275 million people are depending upon the forest. And from 2002 to 20, we have lost around 349 hectares of forest because of this ill-defined property rights. And coming to the water pollution, and it is a serious issue all around the world. And in India, we suffer a lot with the huge population, and around 70% of the population are consuming polluted water, contaminated water, which is not good for drinking. And the Nidhi Ayog has computed the water quality index, and our country stands too behind in managing the water resources. And if you take the case, it is around they have surveyed around 122 countries, where we stand by 120. So this is a poor statistics, that we are not concentrating on managing the water resources, and it too because of ill-defined property rights. If you take the industries, mostly they open the industries nearby the river, canal, or near to the seashore. The thing is, just they are very comfortable in discharging all the wastes to the river or canal. And if you take the Thiruvarur in Tamil Nadu, it has completely affected the Noyal River, and because of these pollutants, they discharge all the pollutant without recycling or reducing its impact. And when you take the next land degradation, and it is also a major issue due to deforestation and overgrazing. and when we overgraze the common lands, and it leads to depletion of the land resources. And if you take the statistics, around 12 million hectares of land are lost due to this desertification and degradation of the resources. And the land degradation determines the well-being of 3.2 billion people, around 40% of the whole world population. But we are not very much particular about managing this land management, or we have exploited the land almost. When we dump the waste in a common land, not only it affects the soil fertility, and also it affects the groundwater resources. And this is a huge issue, and it creates various social cost to the people. And altogether it is because of this ill-defined properties. And even here, if you compare the private land and common land, private land is comparatively managed better as you compare the common lands. And coming to the major aspect, whether it is economics or conservation. If you take the case for what we are giving much more importance, whether for economics or conservation. And if you take the case of India, our government and its policy and community, altogether we have failed to manage the resources. And we cannot be very particular that only government has failed or policy has failed. Almost all have failed in managing the environmental resources. That is my observation. And even though the scientists are very particular about informing that we have to manage, and if it goes beyond this level, just now we are 1.1 degree global temperature degree Celsius, and if it reaches 1.5, then it will be a huge problem. Every then and there we are getting statistics about warning from the scientists, but we do not much care about the conservation of environmental resources. And if you take the case of this lockdown due to pandemic, and at the time we could see some improvements in the air quality uh, uh, because of this transportation, which was not allowed due to this lockdown. At the time, we could see some improvements in the environmental resources, particularly in air quality. But almost the whole world, they are very particular about only the economics. Economic slowdown is there, unemployment is there. Okay, I accept that the economic factors are very important, but at the same time, we never think, or we never speak more about the conservation. Just we speak for sake of speaking, but for environment we are not showing much more care. That is my point. And irrespective of all this government or whatever it may be, we are responsible for managing the resources, but we concentrate more on only economics as compared to conservation. We save money, and we feel that in future it is uncertain, future is uncertain, so we want to save more money for our future generation or for our own sake. But when it comes to the case of environmental resources, we don't bother about the future generation or the present generation. And sustainable development goals we have, and we are speaking more about it. But when it comes to the mandate, and just it is like a policy which we were moved from million development goals to sustainable development goals. After some year, we will be moving to some other aspect, and this should not be there. And we need development, economic development, as much we have to concentrate on conservation of natural resources also. And what is the environmental perspective? What perspective that we have? We have two dilemmas, as I said earlier. When it is my property and I show more care, when it is common property, oh, it is like a common property, we can misuse, no need of taking care. That intention is huge in our mind, and that is a major reason. And as the environment is free good, and we people, we want to maximize the use of the resources rather managing its sustainability. And particularly the poverty stricken people, those who depend on the nature, and we cannot blame them. They are using, but they are not, we can say that they are not exploiting as much what the industries and automobiles are doing. And here, what is the intention of people is this free rider problem. As in environmental economics, we used to speak more about this. What is a free rider problem? The thing is, what they feel is, if I manage these resources, what I am going to get? If I manage my property, my future generation can enjoy its income from the trees or the garden, whatever it may be. What is the need to manage the common property? What I am going to get in future? Nothing else. If I am going to spend some amount, or if I take care of the management of a common property or a common food resources, in future someone is going to use, and I cannot ask them why you are misusing the resources. And that is what happens here. And then the free rider problem, just they want to utilize more, misuse more, rather managing the resources. That is the environmental perspective that we have. And coming to the privatization, as I am comparing the private good and public good, and I say the private good is more fair of managing the environmental resources, and private goods are more efficient as compared to the common or public good. And whether it may raise a question whether we can privatize the common public resources or we can handle all the natural resources to the private people. And even if you take the case of Ronald Coase, he says that when the prop rights are ensured, then it will internalize the externalities. But if you do that, in countries like India, poor people will be highly affected, and wherein the dominant people, they may occupy the resources for us. They will tell we will manage the resources. And if you privatize, then we will face a problem. And as it is not the case of privatizing industry or other things. And even though the course idea is when the rights are secure, then we can internalize the rights. But for that purpose, we cannot go with the privatization of the natural resources or environmental goods. And that too in the countries like India, the poor depend hugely on the environmental goods. So they use the public good for grazing, fuel, wood, and other purpose. So this idea cannot be accepted. And even if you take the study of N.S. Joda, and he has studied 82 villages from different 7 states in India, wherein he found that the rural poor, they get 14 to 23% of the income from the common property resources, and even rich people are getting some benefits out of the common property resources, and particularly poor are getting more benefits. So that we privatizing the resources cannot be a good solution, and we have to think somewhat for what has to be done in a better way for managing the environmental resources. And my suggestion is corrective action. So better, instead of privatizing the resources wherein the rich people may utilize more and poor may get affected, it is better to go for a collective action or collective management for managing the environmental resources. That will be a good part to manage resources sustainably, particularly. And privatization of environmental goods, it is like a social justice. We cannot rely upon it. So there are many instances. If you take the case of India, we people, our indigenous people and indigenous traditional our knowledge shows that we have managed our own resources. If you take the common property resources, common pond or common land, grazing land, the local people, they manage the resources. We had collective action already, but due to all this development and migration, it has splitted, and we are not managing the resources. And what government did is, because of all this, they have decentralized the rights to the local bodies. In 1992, the 93rd and 94th constitutional amendments, it says that the local panchayat has to manage the natural resources, and also the municipality has to manage the resources. But what this panchayat and municipality is doing is, they are very particular in implementing the government programs of constructing buildings, roads, and other things where the fund circulation is more. But they are not concentrating on managing the natural resources, and that is a big issue that we have to concentrate. And you might have heard about the Eleanor Ostrom, who has published her book in 1990 about governing the commons. And she is a Nobel laureate. She is the first lady to get the Nobel Prize in economics in 2009. And she has given certain principles. How we have to develop a collective action, what a collective action should be. And first we have to, at a local level or panchayat level, we have to create a group of people where they have to come forward and they have to form a group. As this local panchayat and municipality, they have failed, as people, we can come forward and we can choose our leader and we can form a group. That group must be very clear with the boundaries of the resources. What is the boundary of the resources? What are the resources existing? For each and every panchayat, there is a border, and there is certain limits. They must know what is the boundary, and accordingly they have to take rules and regulation and how to manage the rules and regulation. If someone is misusing, how we have to punish, and what are the things we have to do. Everything has to be clearly noted. For some, I will give an example. In some villages, they will not allow livestock in the ponds. There is some regulation. You must not wash clothes in the pond because it is used for other purposes. Like that, they can have their own rules for managing the local resources. And if it is made in a rural area and urban area, then we can manage the resources and we can overcome all these issues all the environmental issues. That is my core idea. And as I am speaking particular about the country or within the region, what about the transboundary pollution? What we can do? Not only within the country, we need collective action at international level. And even if you might have heard about the United Nations COP26 meeting, where various speculation was going before the meeting, and this was they may bring this and this regulation, that this and that. There was a huge speculation. But what happened when this it was leaked? Some Australia who export more coal and Saudi Arabia who export more oil, they have started to criticize these COP26 ideas. And even in the meeting, we India and China, we are against dropping the use of the coal. And nothing wrong in it is because we are developing countries where what is required is just a minute, sir. I will come with. What is required is we need a classification. We cannot take developed countries and developing countries in the same part or less developed countries in the same angle. Just the developed countries must provide some funds so that the developing countries they can contribute, they can move towards renewable energy instead of using non-renewable coal or other fuels. And it has to be done not only at a local level or a national level, at international level. There is a need for corrective action for managing the environmental resources. And Manrega, we can use this Manrega for managing the resources. But if you see the statistics, it is not good. Just for namesake, the works are going and they can manage the local resources, but they are not doing that. This corrective action group has to do that so that we can manage the environmental resources sustainably. And coming to the conclusion, this is what I want to say. Only way is corrective action at national level and international level will control the environmental degradation. And just even our prime minister has said that within 2030 we will control somewhat the major pollution. And when you say that there should be some benchmarks for each and every year, we have to monitor what is going with just telling gathering and like a function, it is not an important thing. When you say it is with 2030, then we should be very specific. Every year it has to be audited. Otherwise, we just it is like a message to the country, and it should not be that. My thing is corrective action should be in, at the international level and national level, so that we can manage the environmental resources sustainably. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Damodaran. Yeah, so on behalf of the association, I thank the presenters and Nadu and to deliver